Hello everybody. Today I am going to show you the important structures of your digestive system. So first, here in this small model you can see three important salivary glands. So in front of your lower part of the ear you see this large salivary gland. This is called the parotid salivary gland. This is the largest salivary gland, okay? And this green tube-like structure is the duct. So parotid duct, and this one duct is the tube that takes the saliva that is secreted into the duct from the gland to the mouth. So this duct takes the saliva into the mouth. Under the mandible, this is the mandible, they have dissected it, so this is the mandible here, the bone. Under the mandible, this is the submandibular salivary gland, and you see this is the duct for that gland. And under the tongue, this is the tongue, this one is sublingual. Sub means under, sublingual, lingual means tongue, so sublingual. And these tiny ducts, you see, several, take the saliva to the mouth. So the largest one here, this is the parotid salivary gland. This is the duct for the parotid gland. This is the submandibular, sub means under the mandible. This is the duct, and this is the sublingual, and these are the tiny ducts. Okay, so those are the salivary glands. Remember, you have the same glands in the other side of your head. Now I will show you the parts of the digestive system in this model. So first, let's start from the oral cavity or mouth. So this is the oral cavity or mouth, and the floor of the oral cavity is the tongue. So this is the tongue, and the roof of the oral cavity is the palate. So this is the palate, okay? And this is the oral cavity. And the roof of the oral cavity or palate, two parts. This part of the palate is formed by the bones, bony part. That's why this part is called the hard palate. Makes sense, right? And this posterior part of the palate is formed by the skeletal muscle. This is a skeletal muscle here, which is covered by a thick mucosa, thick mucosal layer. So this part is soft. That's why this is called the soft palate. Okay, and the free end of the soft palate is called uvula. So this is the uvula. So when you swallow the food, the uvula moves up to close this opening. So the food will not enter into the nasal cavity or nasopharynx, okay, which could be dangerous. So uvula moves up to close this passage or opening when you swallow the food. So food can only go downwards, right? Cannot go to the nasal part. Okay, then after the oral cavity, this is the pharynx, okay, and this upper part of the pharynx is the oropharynx that receives the food from the oral cavity. Since it is behind the oral cavity, that is called oropharynx. Then this part is the laryngopharynx, and the lower end of the laryngopharynx divides, and the food enters into this posterior part or posterior tube, that is the esophagus, and the air enters into the anterior organ, that is the larynx. So you see here, from the oral cavity, the food or mouth, the food enters into the oropharynx, then enters into the laryngopharynx, and then food enters into the esophagus, which is behind. And air from the nasal cavity, you see this way, enters into the nasopharynx first, then oropharynx, then laryngopharynx, then the air will enter into the larynx. This is the larynx. Now when you swallow the food, food should go into the esophagus, not into the larynx. Larynx is for air, right? So this structure, this is called the epiglottis. When you breathe this way, the air enters into the larynx, then trachea. And when you swallow the food, this epiglottis moves down to close the laryngeal inlet. So this one moves down to close or cap. So the food can only enter into the esophagus, cannot enter into the larynx. Okay. So this is the esophagus, narrow tube that takes the food from the pharynx to the stomach. Okay. So this is the stomach. The function of the stomach is storing the food for a few hours and also digestion of the food. So when the food stays inside the stomach, the gastric secretion occurs, and that contains the hydrochloric acid and other secretions that will break the food and make the semi-solid food into a liquid. The liquid food then enters into this part of the intestine. This is called the duodenum. Okay, and then enters into the jejunum and then ileum. So those are three parts of your small intestine. What are those? First part is the duodenum that receives food from the liquid food from the stomach, and then this is the shortest part of the small intestine and first part. Then the second part is the jejunum and third part is the ileum. Then ileum, this is the end of the ileum, gives food material to the large intestine, and this is the first part of the large intestine. This is called the cecum. Okay, so first food enters into the cecum, then this is the ascending colon. Okay, and then next part is the transverse colon, this way. Okay, and this is the descending colon. Descending colon, and descending colon then becomes the sigmoid colon here, S-shaped, and then the rectum, anal canal, and anus. Okay, so those are the parts you can see in this model. Now we'll quickly go over these before we see the internal structures. Okay, everybody, so let me show you the parts again. So this is the first organ or part of your digestive system. This is the oral cavity, and the floor is the tongue, and roof is the palate. Palate has how many parts? Two parts. This part is the hard palate formed by the bones. Two bones form the hard palate. Anterior part is formed by the maxilla, and posterior part is formed by the palatine bone. That's why it is palate. So maxilla here and palatine bone here. And then this part is the soft palate formed by skeletal muscle, which is covered by a thick mucosa. Okay, and the end of the soft palate is called what? The uvula. And uvula moves like this. When you swallow the food, the uvula closes this opening, so the food cannot go up, will go downwards, enter into the oropharynx, and then laryngopharynx, and then the food enters into the esophagus. Food should not enter into the larynx. So who prevents that? The epiglottis. This one moves down to close the laryngeal inlet. Okay, so food can only enter into the esophagus, and esophagus moves the food all the way to the stomach. Okay, so this is the stomach, and it is dilated wide organ. Why? Because stomach stores the food, and during that time when the stomach stores the food for hours, a lot of secretion occurs inside the stomach to digest or break the food into small pieces and or small molecules, and that is digestion, and a lot of secretion occurs, so the food, semi-solid food, becomes liquid, okay, food, and that liquid food stuff enters into this part of the small intestine, the first part, duodenum, then enters into a long second part, jejunum, and the third part, ileum. And from the ileum, the food enters into the first part of the large intestine, and that is what? This is the first part of the large intestine. So from the duodenum, food enters here, and this is called the cecum. Okay, and this is the ascending part of the colon. Okay, and then the transverse. Okay, so this is the ascending colon, this is the transverse colon, this is the descending colon, and then sigmoid colon here, then rectum. This part is the rectum. So sigmoid colon is here, rectum, anal canal is here, and anus. Okay, so from the ileum, the last part of the small intestine, this is the small intestine. From the ileum, food enters into the cecum, and then this is the ascending colon, this is the transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon is here, and then this part is the rectum, and this is the anal canal and anus. Okay, now you see the area where the ascending and transverse meet, this curve or angle, this is called the right colic flexure or hepatic flexure. Hepatic means liver, so this is the liver. So since it is in the liver side, that's why it is called hepatic flexure or right colic flexure. And this one, where the transverse meets the descending colon, this is called the splenic flexure. Why? Because this is the spleen. Okay, splenic flexure or left colic flexure. Okay. So now I'll show you inside the stomach. So this is the inside of the stomach. You see these folds, these are called rugae, gastric rugae. So when your stomach is empty, you can see these rugae more clearly. They become more prominent. When stomach is full, because of the pressure, the rugae get more faint because of the pressure or stretch. So these are rugae. This is the upper part of the stomach where the esophagus enters into the stomach. This part is called the cardia. So cardia first receives the food. Okay, and this dome-shaped part is called the fundus of the stomach. So this is the cardia, this is the fundus. Okay, and this part is the body, the middle white portion. Okay, so fundus is just above this, the dome-shaped part, and this part is the body. Okay, so this white part is the body, and then it gets narrow, and this is called the pyloric part. Okay, the first part of the pyloric region is wider, that is called the pyloric antrum, and then it gets narrow, and this part is called the pyloric canal, and this is the pyloric sphincter. So you see the pyloric part or region has three structures. This is the pyloric antrum, the white part, first part, then pyloric canal, and this is the pyloric sphincter. The sphincter controls how much food will enter from the stomach into the duodenum. Make sense? And then if you see inside the intestine, you can see here these folds. These are actually circular folds like this, not like rugae. Rugae are like longitudinal, but these are circular. And these circular folds inside the small intestine are called plica circularis. You can also see here. So inside the small intestine, you have these folds, circular folds called plica circularis. Okay, and this is the end of the small intestine, the end of the ileum. Between the ileum and cecum, this sphincter, there is another sphincter. This is called Ileocecal Sprinter. Makes sense, right? Between ileum and cecum, Ileocecal Sprinter. It regulates how much food stuff will enter from the ileum into the cecum. This structure, you see, is attached to the cecum. It is a finger-like or worm-like structure. This is called vermiform appendix. Vermiform means worm-like. It looks like a small finger, and you know, appendicitis is a commonly heard clinical condition. If inflammation occurs due to infection, then the appendix, swelling of the appendix occurs, and that can, if you don't remove it on time, it can rupture, and the food stuff can enter into the peritoneal cavity and can cause sepsis. And that person, if you don't clean the abdominal cavity or peritoneal cavity, that can spread quickly and can cause a shock and may even cause death, because the food stuff that has a lot of toxic chemicals. Anyway, so this is ileocecal valve. And now let's see the large intestine. You see these pocket-like or pouch-like structures. These are called haustra. Haustra. Haustrum is singular, haustra is plural. So these are haustra pouches. You can also see here. And in the large intestine, you see thick band of smooth muscle. And these bands are called the Tinea Coli. So Tinea Coli are the bands of smooth muscle fibers attached to the large intestine. So Tinea Coli. Okay. Let's see if you have anything here. So that is the gastrointestinal tract or GI tract, also called alimentary tract. Now we'll see some accessory organs. Accessory digestive organs are liver. So this is the largest organ, liver, and liver has 4 lobes. This lobe is the largest one. This is the right lobe of the liver. This is the left lobe, and this is called the quadrate. You see rectangular, quadrate, 4 angles. So this is the quadrate lobe next to the gallbladder, and this is called the caudate lobe, this small one, next to the inferior vena cava. So this is inferior vena cava, and this is gallbladder. Okay, and a ligament gets attached here that separates the right and left lobes. So you can see the separation of these 2 lobes, and this ligament is called the falciform ligament. Okay, and that falciform ligament goes down like this and becomes the round ligament and ligamentum teres. So round ligament or ligamentum teres. this area of the liver where you see the hepatic ducts, these are the hepatic ducts, hepatic artery, portal vein, all those structures pass through that area of the liver is called porta hepatis. Porta hepatis. Okay. Now, the gallbladder stores and concentrate the bile. Okay, and bile is very important chemical for the digestion and absorption of fat. So when you eat the fat-rich food, the gallbladder ejects the bile, and that bile is taken by the bile duct into the duodenum. So from here, actually, the duct goes like this, and you see the green part here, that is the bile duct that gives bile into the duodenum. So the bile will get mixed with the food. What kind of food? The fat, and will break the fat, that is the digestion, and help in absorption of the fat. This is another important accessory digestive organ. This is the pancreas, and you see the head part of pancreas is this part, and this is the body, and this is the tail. So you see the head part nicely fits into the curve of the duodenum. Okay, and tail part is attached to the spleen. So this is the tail, and inside the pancreas, this is called the main pancreatic duct. So pancreatic juice enters into this duct, and this duct will give the pancreatic juice into the duodenum. So bile duct brings bile into the duodenum from the gallbladder, and from the pancreas, the pancreatic juice is taken to the duodenum. Okay, and pancreatic juice has all types of digestive enzymes are present: amylase, lipase, protease. And so this is the main pancreatic duct, this one. It goes like this, okay, and enters into the duodenum. And from the main one, a branch goes like this up, and that is called the accessory pancreatic duct. Okay, so this is the main pancreatic duct, this is the accessory pancreatic duct. So those are the structures you can see in this model of the digestive system. So